Remove it by sundown, Mr. Cole, Linda Carver said, the violation slip trembling just slightly in her manicured hand. The swing, the beads, all of it. Non-compliance won't be tolerated. I stood in front of the oak tree, the one my sister built that swing on before she died. Lila's braids brushed my arm, the beads clicking softly in the wind. You touch that swing, I said, and this whole neighborhood goes dark. Her lips curled. Is that a threat? No, I said. That's a fact. Linda didn't know that the HOA's entire electrical system, every lamppost and walkway light, was wired through an illegal retrofit. I'd reviewed the schematics myself when they'd filed for expansion. I was the only licensed civil engineer on this street, and I knew the truth hiding under her polished rules. If you've ever watched an HOA cross a line so far, you could feel your pulse in your jaw. Hit subscribe now, because what she did next made national news. My name's Ethan Cole, I said, calmer now. Lot 27, structural engineer, state certified. You might want to double-check who signed off on your last inspection. Her smugness cracked. Just a blink, but I saw it. Behind me, the oak's leaves shivered in the late afternoon light, the swing swaying gently as if my sister's hand was still there, keeping it balanced. When she built it, she told me, something steady for Lila, something that lasts when I don't. She died 3 weeks later. That swing isn't furniture, it's her memory. The only place my niece feels close to her mom. And 2 days ago, Linda Carver, the self-appointed queen of Maple Ridge Estates, cut Lila's braids off during a so-called youth appearance compliance check. She said it violated uniform presentation standards. My niece cried herself to sleep clutching those beads. I cleaned her hair off the porch like I was sweeping away dignity itself. So, when Linda showed up again, demanding we take down the swing too, I wasn't looking at an HOA president. I was looking at a woman who thought control was the same as order and cruelty was policy. Linda, I said quietly, do you know what grounding means? She blinked, uncertain. Excuse me? In engineering, I said, it's the only thing that keeps the current from burning everything down. The silence that followed was heavy. You could hear the cicadas whining through it, the hum of power lines above us. Lines I knew were out of code, lines she'd signed off on to save money. She scoffed and straightened her papers. You can cite whatever you want, Ethan. The rules apply to everyone. Good, I said. Then they'll apply to you too. Lila squeezed my hand. I could feel her trembling, small and determined. I looked down at her, at those short, uneven strands framing her face. Go inside, sweetheart, I whispered. She didn't move, brave, just like her mother. Linda cleared her throat. Non-compliance fines begin tomorrow, I smiled. Then I'll start my report tonight. I watched her walk back toward her SUV, clipboard tucked under her arm like a shield. The same clipboard she'd used to humiliate a child. I knew then that this wasn't just about a swing. It was about power, unchecked and unquestioned. And power like that only stands until someone pulls the plug. The sun dipped low, turning the cul-de-sac gold. I ran my hand over the swing's rope, feeling the coarse fibers bite into my skin. It felt like holding my sister's promise. I wasn't backing down, not for fines, not for threats, not for anything. I turned to the camera mounted under the eaves, always recording, always watching. Where are you watching from? I asked softly. Because this is where it starts. The HOA thought they could trim our lives into submission, but they'd forgotten. When you push an engineer, he doesn't just push back. He rebuilds the whole foundation. And tonight, Linda Carver was about to find out what happens when the man she underestimated decides to make her rules collapse under their own weight. By morning, the violation notice was stapled to my front door like a scarlet letter. Non-compliance, unauthorized structure, failure to remove will incur daily fines. Linda's signature sat at the bottom, sharp and smug. The HOA seal gleamed like approval from a kingdom built on fear. I peeled the paper off, folded it, and tucked it into my back pocket. They're serious, Janet Ruiz said from across the street, her coffee steaming in the chill. You should just take it down, Ethan. They'll bleed you dry. I looked at her porch. No wind chimes, no planters, not even a welcome mat. Just beige perfection. That's how they win, I said, one neighbor at a time. By 9 a.m., Maple Ridge Estates had turned into an audience. Curtains fluttered as Linda's white SUV rolled through the cul-de-sac like a patrol car. Every week she picked a new target: a faded mailbox flag, a mismatched curtain, a child's bike left outside for too long. She called it maintaining standards. I called it control disguised as care. Today, though, she didn't look at me. She looked at the swing. The rope swayed slightly in the wind, like it was daring her to touch it. Lila watched from the window, clutching her backpack, silent but furious. Linda smiled at her reflection in the SUV window, not realizing the neighborhood saw everything. Her husband wasn't around anymore. Rumor said he left after she fined her own sister for parking on the grass. Power had become her addiction. At noon, I walked to the HOA office, a converted guest house behind Linda's home. Inside, the air smelled like air freshener and resentment. Photos lined the walls: smiling residents, trimmed lawns, awards for community excellence. None of it looked real. Linda sat behind her desk, tapping her pen. "Here for your payment?" she asked without looking up. "I'm here for your policy," I said. "The one that lets you cut a child's hair and destroy property without consent." Her pen stopped. "You're emotional. It's unbecoming." "I'm a guardian," I said, "and you broke the law." Marcus Green was there too, seated against the wall. Board member, numbers man, always quiet. He adjusted his glasses but didn't speak. I caught his eye. Something flickered. Guilt, maybe, or fear. Linda leaned back. "Our charter allows discretionary enforcement to preserve community image." "Your charter expired 2 years ago," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "I checked your corporate filings with the state," I said. "You never renewed your HOA registration after the last election cycle. That means your discretionary powers are void." Her jaw tightened. "You're not a lawyer." "No," I said. "I'm the guy who reads blueprints and bylaws for fun. The guy who understands what happens when you build on a foundation that's already cracked." Marcus coughed quietly, but Linda shot him a look sharp enough to cut air. He sank back into silence. I didn't push further. Not yet. I had the truth, but truth alone wasn't power. Not until I could prove how deep her negligence ran. Outside, the sound of sprinklers echoed through the lawns. The HOA had just replaced the entire system last month. Unauthorized modifications by contractors Linda personally selected. I knew one of them. They'd been fined before for skipping city permits. It wasn't just overreach, it was fraud hiding under pretty grass. By the time I got home, the air felt heavier. My voicemail was full. Warning calls from the HOA. 2 from residents thanking me quietly, but telling me not to fight too hard. Fear moved through Maple Ridge like humidity, thick, invisible, suffocating. That night, I sat under the oak tree with Lila. She traced the rope scars in her palms. "Are we going to lose it?" she asked. I looked up at the branches stretching into the dark. "Not if we do this smart." She nodded, trusting me completely. That trust burned like a promise in my chest. From my porch, I could see Linda's lights flicker again. The same bad wiring she'd refused to fix. I smiled faintly. Every system breaks the same way. A loose connection, a weak bond, pressure ignored too long. Linda thought she could bully us with papers and policy, but I built my career fixing what people like her refused to see. Tomorrow I'd start where she least expected, on her own turf, with her own rules. And this time, the swing wouldn't be the only thing hanging in the balance. The next morning, I found Marcus Green waiting by my truck. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, hands buried in his pockets, eyes darting toward Linda's house. "You planning another inspection?" I asked. He flinched. "No, just walking." His shirt was half untucked, and his tie hung like he'd given up halfway. I'd seen that look before, someone torn between survival and conscience. "You're not the walking type, Marcus," I said. He gave a humorless smile. "Linda told the board you're threatening legal action, said you're trying to undermine community authority." "I'm trying to stop a woman who cut a child's hair," I said. "But I guess that doesn't fit her narrative." He swallowed. "She says the vote was unanimous." "Was it?" I asked. He didn't answer. His silence was the answer. Behind us, the hum of sprinklers kicked on again. The new system Linda had installed without permits. Water pooled along the curb where it shouldn't. "You ever notice that leak near the hydrant?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Linda said it's minor. Said the contractors signed off. Contractors don't sign off on public lines, engineers do. I crouched, tapping the concrete with my boot. That pressure buildup is going to burst a joint within a week, and when it does, the city's going to want paperwork. Marcus rubbed his temple. You can't prove— I can, I said, standing, and I will. You think the HOA cares about safety? They're sitting on a ticking liability bomb. He looked around nervously. Don't say that out loud. Then you say it, I said quietly. You're on the board. You've seen the invoices, the checks that don't match the vendors' names. He froze. I'd hit it. He knew. She made me sign the budget sheet, he whispered, voice shaking. Said it was just a formality. I didn't know. Yeah, you did, I said, not cruelly. You just didn't want to know. He turned away, shoulders tight. You don't understand what she's capable of. Last time someone questioned her, she got them fined into selling their house. And you're okay living like that? I asked. Under her rules? Marcus stared at the swing behind me. The rope creaked softly in the breeze. Your sister built that? Yeah. He nodded once, jaw tightening. She made me a pie when I moved in, cherry, said this neighborhood would feel like family. For a moment his face cracked open, guilt and shame tangled with memory. Then he straightened, pulling his composure back like armor. I have a meeting, he said. You didn't hear anything from me. Sure, I said, but when this goes public, you'll wish you'd spoken louder. He hesitated, then walked off without looking back. I watched him go, noting every twitch of hesitation in his stride. A man at war with his own spine. But war has casualties, and silence was one of them. Back inside, I opened my laptop. The HOA's website still listed an outdated certificate for their incorporation. Exactly what I needed to confirm they were operating illegally. No renewal filing, no bond coverage, no insurance for those unlicensed. Electrical retrofits. The house of cards was wobbling, and I was about to pull the right one. That evening, Lila came outside barefoot, holding 2 beads in her palm. Found these in the grass, she said softly. I took them, closing her hand around them again. We'll fix it, I said. All of it. Janet called over the fence. Ethan, you're poking the bear, she warned. Good, I said. Maybe it's time the bear met someone who doesn't run. As the sun dipped low, I saw movement near Linda's office window, her silhouette pacing. Even from here, I could feel the tension building across the street, invisible but electric. Marcus was right about one thing. She was dangerous, but so was I, in my own way. I didn't fight with threats. I fought with proof. Tomorrow, I'd have my first sample report ready for the city inspector. And when they came knocking, Linda Carver's perfect neighborhood would start to unravel, one wire and one secret at a time. The swing creaked softly again behind me, steady, defiant, like it knew we were just getting started. By dawn, the sound of trucks filled the cul-de-sac. Orange vests, clipboards, and HOA-issued work orders. They were here to make an example. Linda stood beside her SUV, sunglasses hiding the glee in her eyes. Removal in progress, she said when I stepped outside. You had your chance, Mr. Cole. 2 contractors approached the oak tree with saws. I moved fast, blocking their path. Touch that swing, I said, and you're tampering with personal property. Linda crossed her arms. Community property, technically. The oak sits within shared green space. Wrong, I said, pointing to the corner marker embedded in the soil. Survey pin, lot 27 boundary line. You're trespassing. The contractors froze. One looked at the other, unsure. Ma'am, Linda's jaw tightened. Proceed. Don't, I warned, because when you cut that rope, you're cutting into an ongoing state inspection. You'll be part of the liability. That word, liability, made them hesitate. They stepped back. Linda's nostrils flared. You can't bluff your way through every violation. This isn't a bluff, I said. It's due process. Her clipboard trembled slightly. You think your little engineer's license scares me? No, I said, but it scares your insurance provider. The tension broke when Janet stepped out from her porch, phone filming. He told you to stop, she said. Her voice shook but didn't falter. You're not cutting that swing. Across the street, curtains lifted. Neighbors watching, whispering. The HOA thrived on quiet compliance. But today, silence cracked. Linda spun toward Janet. Recording is prohibited during enforcement procedures. Janet didn't lower her phone. Then call the cops and tell them you're cutting down a dead woman's memorial. That did it. The contractors retreated to their truck, pretending to check their tools. Linda turned crimson. "Fine," she hissed. "But every day that swing stands, you'll pay for it." "I already have," I said. "But the interest is all yours." She stormed off, heels stabbing the concrete. When the noise faded, I leaned against the oak, heart pounding. Lila peeked through the window, eyes wide. "They're gone? For now," I said. But it's not over. By noon, the email hit my inbox. Notice of escalated non-compliance. Daily fine, $500. I laughed out loud. She was doubling down, cornered and desperate. That meant she was making mistakes. At work, I ran my own inspection model. It simulated structural stress across electrical grids using real property layouts. I loaded the HOA's light schematics, public documents, and let the program analyze them. Within minutes, it flagged 23 violations: unbonded metal conduits, missing disconnects, improper grounding, each one a potential fire hazard, each one her responsibility. Discovery method, professional observation, expertise. I documented everything with time-stamped screenshots and sent a preliminary report to the city's building department, not as a complaint, but as a safety alert, the kind that demanded inspection under state statute. That evening, Marcus called. His voice was low, shaking. "Linda's furious. She's saying you're trying to bankrupt the HOA?" "I'm trying to keep people safe," I said. "You saw the wiring near the pool. You know it's a hazard." "She won't stop," he whispered. "She's talking about legal action." "Good," I said. "Then discovery becomes public." He hesitated. "Ethan, there's something else? She's using HOA funds to pay those contractors under a fake maintenance vendor. If the state digs deeper—" "They will," I said. "And you'll have a choice, testify or go down with her." Marcus exhaled shakily. "I didn't sign up for this." "None of us did," I said. "But here we are." When I hung up, the street was quiet again. I stood on my porch, looking at the oak. The rope swayed gently, catching the last light of sunset. It reminded me of my sister's strength, quiet but unbreakable. Linda thought she could win through intimidation, fines, and noise. But her noise couldn't drown out evidence. Tomorrow, the city would open my report, and the cracks in her empire would start to show. The swing creaked once more, as if agreeing, and somewhere behind the drawn curtains of Maple Ridge Estates, the first whispers of rebellion began. The following day started with sirens, faint, distant, and far too early for comfort. By the time I opened my door, a city utility truck was parked at the cul-de-sac entrance. 2 inspectors in high-visibility vests stood by the lamppost, one pointing at exposed wiring near the sidewalk. Linda was already outside, bathrobe, clipboard, and fury. "This is private property," she barked. The lead inspector, a woman named Alana Boyd, adjusted her badge. "We received a public safety report citing potential code violations under State Statute 29.3. That gives us jurisdiction." Linda's voice cracked, but she forced a smile. "I assure you, everything here meets code." "That's what we're here to confirm," Alana replied. I stayed by the oak tree, silent, hands in my pockets, watching, waiting. Linda's eyes flicked to me. "You did this." "I filed a professional alert," I said evenly. "Not a complaint. If there's nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear." Her laugh was brittle. "You'll regret this." "Not as much as you will if someone gets electrocuted," I said. The inspectors moved methodically, pulling up access panels and tracing conduit paths. Within minutes, Alana frowned. "Unbonded connections, no grounding straps, and the panels aren't sealed. Who approved this installation?" Linda's silence said everything. Marcus emerged from his porch mid-inspection, clutching a coffee mug like it was a shield. He looked from me to Linda, then back at the inspectors. His shoulders sagged, guilt and relief in equal measure. I caught his eye, gave a small nod. "It's happening," Alana scribbled notes. "We'll need the permit records and contractor licenses for verification," Linda stammered. They're on file with the board. Then we'll expect them by close of business," Alana said, expression unreadable. The tension hung thick. Neighbors peeked through blinds, filming with phones. Power like Linda's thrived in secrecy. Sunlight was poison to her kind. By afternoon, she came storming to my house, 2 board members in tow. "You think you can humiliate me?" she snapped. "I think you humiliated yourself," I said. "You're destroying the community." "I'm protecting it," I said. "There's a difference." She thrust a new paper at me. "Effective immediately, you are suspended from HOA participation and barred from common facilities." "I don't need your pool or your park," I said. "I have my land and my license." Marcus lingered behind her, pale and silent. His eyes met mine for a fraction of a second, filled with apology. Linda noticed. "Marcus," she said sharply, "go home." He hesitated, then obeyed. When they left, I sat on the porch steps, heart hammering. The inspector's report would reach the city office by morning, but Linda wasn't done yet. She'd retaliate, and soon. Later that evening, my email pinged with an anonymous message. "They're shredding documents tonight. HOA office. You didn't hear it from me." No name, but I didn't need one. Marcus had finally picked a side. Discovery method, direct witnessing of wrongdoing. I grabbed my flashlight and headed toward the back of Linda's property. Through the narrow hedge, I could see her office. Window glowing faintly. Inside, papers burned in a small metal bin. She was destroying evidence, budget sheets, contractor invoices, anything that tied her to illegal spending. I filmed quietly, capturing the date, time, and address. Proof. That was all I needed. Then her voice cut through the stillness. "You can't hide forever, Ethan," she yelled to someone on the phone. "He's finished." I smiled in the dark. Not yet. Back home, I saved the footage and backed it up to 3 separate drives. One for me, one for my lawyer, one for the city inspector. When I stepped onto the porch, Lila was there, wrapped in a blanket. "You're still fighting?" she asked sleepily. "Always," I said. "Because some people don't stop until you make them." She leaned her head against my arm. "Mom would be proud." "Yeah," I whispered, "she would." The wind rustled the oak leaves, and somewhere across the street, Linda's lights flickered again. The current was unstable, just like her control. Tomorrow she'd realize the power she thought she owned was already slipping through her fingers, and this time, no amount of shredded paper could save her. By sunrise, Maple Ridge Estates was a battlefield of whispers. The city inspection team had returned with clipboards and caution tape, and this time, they brought company, the municipal safety officer, and a camera crew from the local news. Nothing moved faster through a suburban neighborhood than the smell of scandal. From my porch, I could see Linda pacing in her driveway, phone pressed to her ear, voice sharp and trembling. The HOA's power lines, her power lines, were exposed now, literally and legally. She'd spent years pretending to protect property values while endangering everyone under her thumb. The oak tree's shadow stretched long across the lawn as I sipped my coffee. The swing creaked softly. Lila sat beside me, her knees pulled to her chest. "Is she going to get in trouble?" "She already is," I said. "She just doesn't know how deep yet." Half an hour later, Alana Boyd, the city inspector, walked up my path. She looked tired but satisfied. "Mr. Cole, your report checked out. Multiple violations confirmed. Unlicensed contractors, missing permits, falsified compliance seals. We've filed for an immediate injunction." I nodded. "So the HOA's operations are suspended?" "As of this morning," she said. "And I need you to know, you probably saved lives." That landed heavier than I expected. I thought I'd feel triumphant, but all I felt was steady, a quiet certainty that the balance was shifting. Across the street, Linda saw us talking and stormed over, robe replaced with a tailored blazer, defiance in every step. "You can't do this!" she shouted at Alana. "You have no authority on private land." Alana turned calmly. "The moment you tampered with public circuits, it became our business. You've been operating without municipal oversight for over 2 years. Linda's face drained of color. "That's not possible." I spoke then, softly but clear. "It's called negligence, Linda. You hid behind bylaws that expired with your board's registration." She swung toward me. "You think this makes you a hero?" "No," I said. "It makes me an engineer who did his job." Neighbors began gathering now, Janet, a few from down the street, even Marcus, standing halfway between us. He looked hollow, like someone holding a secret too long. Linda noticed him and sneered. And you, don't think I don't know who leaked our budget files. He froze, panic flashing across his face. I stepped in. Leave him out of this. He's the only one on your board who still remembers what decency looks like. Marcus flinched but didn't deny it. His hands shook as he pushed his glasses up. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he said, voice cracking. But you lied to us, Linda. You used our signatures to cover your spending. She turned on him. You're finished. No, he said, trembling but firm. You are. The inspectors exchanged glances. One started snapping photos of the exposed wiring, while another measured voltage with a handheld meter. Sparks hissed briefly at a junction box, too close to a gas line. Alana cursed under her breath. If this had gone another month, the next storm could have lit this place up. Linda's confidence finally broke. She stepped back, clutching her clipboard like a lifeline. I looked around at the neighbors watching, their faces shifting from curiosity to fear to anger. For the first time, they saw the danger beneath her polished perfection. And maybe they saw me differently too, not as a troublemaker, but as someone fighting for the safety they'd been promised. That night, after the trucks left and the sun bled into the horizon, the HOA's notice board stood empty. The laminated Community Excellence plaque was gone. Only a single paper fluttered in the breeze. Electrical audit pending, restricted access. Marcus showed up after dark, eyes red. She's calling an emergency board meeting tomorrow, he said quietly. She's blaming me. She wants my resignation. She's unraveling, I said. And we're almost there. Let her make her last mistake in public. He hesitated. What if she brings the police? Then she brings witnesses, I said. And I've got proof she committed fraud. The oak leaves rustled above us, the air humming faintly with the tension of something about to break. I looked at the swing, at the rope that refused to snap no matter how hard the wind blew. It reminded me of why this fight mattered, why I couldn't stop now. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about accountability, and a little girl's right to grow up in a place that didn't punish her for being herself. Tomorrow, the board would meet. And when they did, I'd be there, with evidence, allies, and the truth. The war for Maple Ridge Estates wasn't over. It was just entering its final round. The HOA board meeting was set for 6 p.m., sharp in the community clubhouse, a sterile little room with folding chairs, polished tile floors, and a smell of cheap coffee and fear. By 5:30, the parking lot was already packed. Word had spread about the city inspection and the exposed wiring. People who'd stayed silent for years were suddenly showing up, eyes wide, voices low. Inside, Linda Carver stood at the front table like a queen before her court. Her blazer was ironed, hair perfect, smile razor sharp. But her hands shook slightly when she arranged her notes. She knew the walls were closing in. Marcus sat 2 seats to her left, pale and sweating. He avoided my gaze when I entered, clutching a folder like it might keep him from collapsing. I found a seat in the back, next to Janet, who whispered, "Everyone's recording. Be careful." "I'm counting on it," I said. Linda started the meeting with her usual precision. This session addresses false allegations against the HOA board and the malicious campaign undermining community trust. Her voice was honey over poison. Certain individuals have attempted to smear this association with fabricated evidence. Murmurs rippled through the room. I kept still, waiting. Linda pointed at me. Mr. Cole's so-called engineering report is baseless. The city has not confirmed wrongdoing. This meeting will determine his penalties for harassment and defamation. Janet's whisper cut the tension. She's bluffing. I know, I murmured. Then Marcus stood abruptly. His chair scraped across the floor, startling everyone. That's not true, he said. His voice trembled, but he kept going. The city confirmed multiple violations this morning. I saw the notice myself. Linda's eyes widened. Sit down. No, he said, voice growing steadier. You lied to all of us. You told the board the contractors were licensed. You forged their documents, Linda. Gasps echoed through the room. Someone started recording openly now. Linda's composure cracked. You don't have proof. Marcus held up his folder. Yes, I do. These are the payments you made to your brother-in-law's company. 6 invoices labeled community maintenance with no business license number. I leaned forward. He'd done it, finally. The conflicted witness had chosen truth over fear. Marcus, she hissed, you're finished. He took a shaky breath. So are you. He turned to the crowd. She's been using HOA funds to hire unlicensed vendors, and when Ethan filed his report, she tried to destroy the evidence. I saw her burning documents in her office. The room erupted. Phones lifted higher, capturing everything. Linda slammed her hand on the table. Enough! None of this is admissible. I stood. It doesn't have to be. The city's already seen it. Her head whipped toward me. You set me up. No, I said calmly. You set yourself up the day you cut a child's hair and called it compliance. The room went still. Even Marcus lowered his eyes. This isn't over, she hissed. It's over when the truth stops spreading, I said. And right now, it's viral. Her face drained of color. She turned toward the door, muttering something about lawyers. Marcus collapsed into his chair, shaking. I crossed the room and crouched beside him. You did the right thing. He nodded weakly. She's going to destroy me. No, I said. She already destroyed herself. You just turned on the lights. Outside, the air was thick with murmurs and camera flashes. Neighbors surrounded Marcus, patting his shoulder, thanking him. The fear that had ruled this community for years was dissolving, replaced with something stronger. Solidarity. Discovery method. Conflicted witness. Confession. As we walked toward the parking lot, Janet smiled through tears. That was brave, she said. Necessary, I said. I looked back at the clubhouse. Through the glass, Linda stood alone at the front of the room, staring at the empty chairs. Her power had evaporated. All that remained was the echo of her own rules collapsing around her. Marcus turned to me. What happens now? Now, I said, pulling the flash drive from my pocket. Now we finish what we started. Tomorrow, I'd take everything, the photos, the wiring report, Marcus's testimony to the state licensing board. Once it hit official channels, Maple Ridge Estates would be forced into emergency reorganization. For the first time in months, I felt the air shift, lighter, freer. The oak tree across the street caught the evening light, leaves rustling like applause. The fight wasn't done yet, but the tide had turned, and this time, the truth was louder than any rulebook Linda Carver ever wrote. The morning after the board meeting felt strangely still, like the air was holding its breath before the next strike. Linda hadn't called the police, not yet. That was her style. She preferred silence and whispers, not open confrontation. But I knew she wasn't done. Not while she still had signatures, fines, and fear to weaponize. I brewed my coffee and stared out the window. The oak tree was steady as always, the swing creaking in the mild breeze. Lila sat beneath it, drawing in her sketchbook. The beads she'd found were now strung into a bracelet on her wrist, small, bright, defiant. My phone buzzed. A message from Alana Boyd. City forwarded your evidence to the State HOA Oversight Division. They've opened an inquiry. Expect contact. A grin tugged at the corner of my mouth. The dominoes were falling. Then another message popped up. This one from an unknown number. You're playing with fire. Stop before you burn too. No signature, but I didn't need one. Linda was panicking. That meant she was losing control. At noon, I drove to my office downtown. My coworkers had already seen the news segment. Local HOA under state investigation after engineer's report. Cameras had caught the moment Marcus spoke out. My inbox was full of messages from other homeowners in neighboring communities. They wanted to know how to fight back too. That night, I pulled the blinds and started working on my counterplan, the one that would end this fight for good. If Linda wanted to twist rules, I'd use the same system she worshipped to expose her. Victory strategy. Professional expertise. Exposes HOA wrongdoing. Phase preparation and setup. I logged into the county permit database and downloaded every file tied to Maple Ridge Estates. Then I cross-referenced each contractor's business license against state registries. Out of 27 projects, 15 had expired or suspended credentials. 2 didn't exist at all. Fraud, clear as daylight. I opened my engineering software and mapped the violations against property lines and utility access. The result was damning. Half the neighborhood's electrical infrastructure was uninspected, some wired through private easements. I added timestamps, GPS coordinates, and state code citations. Each data point was a nail for Linda's coffin. By midnight, I compiled the findings into a professional report, clean, precise, and impossible to dispute. On the last page, I attached one line from my sister's old email to the HOA from years ago, before she passed. Families aren't here to conform, they're here to live. That line reminded me why this mattered. Discovery method. Digital online investigation. As I uploaded the report to the state portal, a light flickered outside. Linda's SUV idled at the corner of my driveway, headlights cutting across the lawn. For a long minute, neither of us moved. Then the car rolled forward, slow and deliberate, before turning away. I watched her taillights disappear into the dark. That was her warning, but I wasn't backing down. The next morning, the HOA's email blast hit every resident's inbox. Community update, pending allegations, misinformation alert. It was pure damage control. She called me an individual with personal grievances and misleading credentials. Janet forwarded it to me with a note. "They're scared." I replied, "Good, they should be." By afternoon, Alana confirmed receipt of my full technical report. "Your evidence is solid," she said over the phone. "Once the state licensing board reviews this, they'll initiate enforcement. If the HOA doesn't comply, they'll face fines, possibly dissolution." "Good," I said. "Just make sure they read every line." When I hung up, I walked outside to the swing. The air smelled of wet earth, thunder rolling somewhere distant. I sat on the edge of the porch, running my hand over the coarse rope. "Almost done, sis," I whispered. "Almost done." Lila joined me, her bracelet catching the fading light. "You think we'll win?" I looked at her, then at the swing. "We already are." The storm clouds rolled closer, heavy and electric. Somewhere across the street, I saw Marcus's silhouette by his window, watching, waiting. He'd risked everything to do the right thing. Tomorrow, his courage, and my report, would be tested in front of the entire neighborhood. The stage was set for the final confrontation. I stood, brushing the dust from my jeans. "Get some sleep, Lila," I said. "Tomorrow's the day we finish what they started." As thunder cracked overhead, the first drops of rain hit the swing's seat. The sound was soft, but certain, like applause from the woman who'd built it. Tomorrow, Maple Ridge Estates would finally learn what accountability looked like. By dawn, thunder had rolled off and left the air heavy with the smell of rain and electricity. The HOA's emergency notice went out at 6 a.m. Mandatory community assembly tonight. Attendance required. That was Linda's move. She wanted control back. One last show of authority before the state came for her. I watched the email load on my phone and smiled. "Perfect," I muttered. She just invited everyone to her own funeral. Lila came down the stairs, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Another meeting?" "Yeah," I said, pouring her a glass of orange juice. "But this time, we're not the ones in trouble." She grinned faintly. "Is she gonna get fired?" "Something like that," I said. "You'll see." By midday, the neighborhood buzzed with speculation. People stopped pretending not to care. Janet told me 3 residents had already filed written complaints against Linda for overreach and misconduct. The control she'd used like oxygen was thinning fast. At work, I double-checked my evidence package, structural analysis, permit violations, city inspection summaries, and Marcus's testimony all compiled into one presentation. But this wasn't just about data, it was about impact. People needed to feel what she'd done, not just see it. So I added one last piece, a 10-second clip from my porch camera, the moment Linda raised those scissors and cut my niece's braids. No words, just the act. The sound of the snip still made my jaw clench, but it needed to be seen. Victory strategy. Progress, preparation phase. Professional expertise meets public proof. At 5 p.m., Marcus texted me. "She's calling in a lawyer. You should be ready." "I'm ready," I replied. "Are you?" After a pause, he wrote, "Yeah, it's time." Discovery method, community canvassing, and coordination. Before heading to the clubhouse, I made a few stops. Janet's porch, the couple from Lot 19, the retired vet who'd been fined for a flagpole height violation. I handed each a small envelope, a printed summary of my findings. "Don't say anything tonight," I told them. "Just watch." By the time I arrived at the clubhouse, every seat was filled. The air buzzed like a live wire. Linda stood at the front, flanked by her attorney, a smug man in a blue suit with a practiced half smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Linda began, Tonight we're addressing the misinformation campaign threatening our community. She gestured to me. This man has defamed our board and disrupted our harmony. The lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Cole's so-called engineering report contains inaccuracies and personal bias. His credentials are under review. I almost laughed. Then you'll be thrilled to know, I said, standing, that the state licensing board confirmed my findings this morning. The HOA's electrical system is officially condemned pending reinspection. Gasps filled the room. Linda's lawyer frowned. That's not... Here's the email, I interrupted, projecting it onto the screen from my tablet. The state seal glowed bright under the fluorescent lights. Marcus stepped forward from the side of the room, voice shaking but strong. It's true. I was there when the inspector posted the order. Linda spun on him. Traitor? No, he said. Neighbor. Murmurs swelled. Phones came out. Some were filming, others live streaming. The tide had turned completely. I pulled up my final slide, a map of the neighborhood overlaid with red lines marking every illegal wiring path. These, I said, are the circuits Linda approved. Each one failed inspection. Any one of them could have sparked a fire, electrocuted a child, or burned down your homes. And she knew. Linda's voice broke. You can't prove intent. I played the clip. The scissors, the braid. The silence that followed was unbearable. Even the lawyer shifted, suddenly unsure of his paycheck. I closed my tablet. Intent looks a lot like habit when you make cruelty your routine. Someone in the back clapped once, then another, then half the room. Janet stood, tears in her eyes. We've all had enough, she said. The HOA's illusion cracked. Linda's authority didn't evaporate. It shattered. I looked at her and said quietly, You built your power on compliance, Linda, but you forgot. People only stay quiet until they see the cost. Outside, thunder rumbled again, faint but certain. The sky mirrored the moment, heavy, electric, cleansing. Tomorrow the state would finalize the injunction, but tonight was about truth, and truth once spoken aloud doesn't go back in the box. I looked around the room, the neighbors, the swing visible through the window, Lila's bracelet glinting under the lights, and I knew the storm was almost over. Next came the reckoning. The morning after the HOA meeting felt like the calm before a verdict. Rain had washed the streets clean, but tension still hung heavy over Maple Ridge Estates. Neighbors who once nodded politely now stopped to talk, whisper, plan. The balance of power had shifted. Their fear had turned into something new, resolve. I spent the early hours preparing. The state enforcement officer was coming to oversee the board's final session before sanctions were announced. This wasn't a rumor anymore. It was official. Linda's reign was ending, and I intended to make sure it ended in the open, not behind some lawyer's desk. The meeting would be held in the same clubhouse where she'd once humiliated residents for chipped paint and crooked mailboxes. It seemed poetic, her empire dismantled in the very room she'd built it. By noon, I printed the final version of my report. Inspection results, photographic evidence, Marcus's confession, and the state email confirming the HOA's suspension. Each page was stamped, sealed, and notarized. My signature sat beside Alana Boyd's. It was airtight. Victory strategy, implementation phase, professional expertise as final leverage. At 3 o'clock, Janet stopped by with Lila, both carrying sandwiches. You're going early? She asked. Yeah, I said, slipping the report into my briefcase. I want to set up the projector before Linda gets there. Lila looked up at me. Is this the last meeting? Yeah, I said softly. After today, nobody tells you what you can wear or how to be. Her smile was small but brave. By 6, the clubhouse was standing room only. The state officer, a tall man with a badge clipped to his belt, stood near the back, flanked by Alana. Marcus sat at the front, pale but steady, a folder in his lap. Linda arrived last, wearing her confidence like armor, but her eyes betrayed the cracks. She tried to call the meeting to order, but the officer spoke first. Under Georgia State Code 42-1A, this board's authority is suspended pending administrative review. He gestured to me. Mr. Cole, you've provided the initiating report. The floor is yours. Linda's jaw locked. This is irregular procedure. So is running an HOA without a valid charter, I said, stepping forward. I connected my laptop, and the projector flickered to life. The first image appeared, the electrical panel under the pool deck, wires exposed, corroded, sparking faintly. Then, a close-up of missing grounding straps, insulation melted away. Gasps rippled through the crowd. These violations weren't minor, I said. They were catastrophic waiting to happen. Every resident here was one storm away from disaster. The next slide, the contractor registry. Half the companies listed didn't exist. The rest had expired licenses. Then came the payments, to Linda's brother-in-law's business. She lunged forward. "Those are fabrications." Marcus stood. "No, they're not," he said, voice cracking but clear. "I signed those checks. You told me they were maintenance reimbursements." Her lawyer whispered something to her, but she waved him off, trembling. "You don't understand?" "I understand. Perfectly," I said. "You built a system that made you untouchable. Until now." The officer held up his hand. "That's enough. The evidence is sufficient. This HOA's governance is hereby terminated pending audit." The room erupted, some in shock, some in relief, some clapping outright. Linda slumped into her chair, mascara streaking down her cheeks. But I wasn't done. I played one last clip, the swing in slow motion, wind pushing it gently. Lila's voice faint in the background. "Mom built it so I could fly without falling." I turned to the room. This wasn't about rules or property lines. It was about people, about what happens when power forgets compassion. Linda buried her face in her hands. For the first time, she looked small. Marcus approached me afterward, voice low. "She'll be gone by tomorrow. The board's resigning." "Good," I said. "Then we rebuild, this time right." Outside, dusk settled over the cul-de-sac. The streetlights flickered on one by one. New ones, rewired and safe. I looked up at the oak, the swing moving gently. Lila ran toward it, laughter echoing through the evening. For the first time in months, Maple Ridge felt alive again. Tomorrow would bring the paperwork, hearings, cleanup. But tonight was victory. Quiet, earned, human. And somewhere behind the whisper of leaves, I could almost hear my sister's voice again, proud, steady, and free. By the time the public hearing began, Maple Ridge Estates wasn't just a neighborhood anymore. It was a headline. The city had opened the HOA's audit for public viewing, and the turnout was overwhelming. Every folding chair in the municipal chamber was filled. News crews lined the back wall, cameras pointed toward the long oak table where the HOA board once sat, their nameplates now stripped bare. Linda Carver entered last. No entourage this time, no lawyer. Just a woman whose authority had withered to silence. She wore black, her hair pinned tight, hands trembling as she carried a folder she probably knew would save nothing. I stood at the opposite end beside Alana Boyd and Marcus. My report was already entered into record, but this hearing wasn't about paperwork. It was about truth made public. The state officer adjusted the microphone. "Today's purpose," he began, "is to address the confirmed violations committed by the Maple Ridge Estates Homeowners Association and determine the future governance of this community." His words echoed through the hall like a bell toll. Linda spoke first, voice brittle but defiant. "This entire proceeding is politically motivated. The claims against me were exaggerated by an engineer with a personal vendetta." The officer nodded. "You'll have time to respond, but the city inspectors verified your electrical systems were unpermitted and unsafe." She turned to me. "You wanted to destroy me." I met her gaze. "No, I wanted to protect my niece, and everyone else you endangered." A murmur of approval swept the crowd. Marcus cleared his throat and stepped up to the microphone. His hands shook, but his voice didn't. "I served on this board. I signed forms I didn't understand because I trusted her. That was my mistake. But when I realized what she'd done, I couldn't stay silent. Ethan was right to expose it." For a moment, Linda looked like she might interrupt, but the weight of the room silenced her. The officer asked me to summarize the findings. I projected the final slide from my report, the wiring schematics glowing red across the chamber screen. "Every marked section here," I said, "was installed by an unlicensed vendor. Each one violated State Code 406.8. We found over 25 separate safety risks, any of which could have caused electrocution or fire. This wasn't negligence, it was systemic failure." The officer nodded. "And your credentials confirm this assessment?" "Yes," I said, sliding forward my stamped license. "I stake my professional reputation on it." Applause broke out. Not loud, but enough to echo. It wasn't celebration, it was relief. Linda slumped in her seat, her voice cracked. I never meant for anyone to get hurt. Intent doesn't change consequence, I said quietly. Janet stood from the crowd. She fined me for my dying husband's wheelchair ramp, she said, voice trembling. Said it didn't match community standards. Another neighbor stood. She tried to evict us for painting our door blue. Then another. She told my son his therapy swing violated safety codes. Voices layered, one after another. Years of silence breaking like glass. Linda covered her ears as the sound grew, a wave of truth crashing down. The officer banged his gavel. Order! Based on findings, the HOA is officially dissolved pending reorganization under new leadership. Mrs. Carver, you are permanently barred from serving on any community board within the state of Georgia. Linda stood abruptly, eyes glistening. You think you're heroes, she spat, voice shaking. You have no idea how hard it is to keep people in line. No, I said softly, stepping toward her. We just learned how to stand without being pushed. The room erupted in applause, raw, defiant, cathartic. Outside, the air smelled of rain and ozone, the kind that comes after a storm finally breaks. Neighbors gathered in clusters, hugging, laughing, crying. Marcus walked beside me, still pale but lighter somehow. She's gone, he whispered. Yeah, I said. But what comes next matters more. Janet joined us, smiling. The state wants residents to nominate a temporary council. You'd make a good chair. I laughed. No thanks, I've had enough politics. But I'll help rebuild the infrastructure. That's where I belong. Across the street, Lila ran ahead toward the oak tree visible through the courthouse window. Her bracelet flashed in the fading light. She climbed onto the swing and pushed off, laughing, free. The cameras caught that moment, the swing in motion, the rebuilt community watching, and by evening, it was everywhere. The caption read, "When one man stood up to an HOA, an entire neighborhood found its voice." And for the first time since my sister's death, I felt like I'd kept her promise, not just to protect what she built, but to make sure it could never be torn down again. The following week, Maple Ridge Estates felt like a different world. The silence of fear had been replaced by the sound of rebuilding, hammers, voices, children laughing in the park. For the first time in years, the neighborhood actually sounded alive. Linda Carver had disappeared overnight. The state seized the HOA's accounts, froze assets, and appointed a temporary community board led by 3 residents, Janet, Marcus, and me. I didn't want the title, but the others insisted. You're the reason we still have homes to fix, Janet said. I couldn't argue with that. Still, I never felt like a victor. Standing in the middle of the cul-de-sac, I saw the wreckage she'd left. People she'd fined into silence, neighbors she'd driven apart, trust she'd shattered. It would take more than a court order to rebuild what fear had hollowed out. Victory, strategy, completion, professional expertise. Exposes HOA wrongdoing, community reborn. Through accountability. On my desk sat the official letter from the state. Case closed. Violations confirmed. Maple Ridge Estates placed under corrective oversight for 12 months. I folded it and slid it into a binder labeled Legacy Projects, a small tribute to my sister. That afternoon, I walked outside to check the swing. The oak stood proud against the sky, its branches spreading wide like open arms. The seat creaked softly as the wind moved through it. Lila was already there, bare feet brushing the grass. Uncle Ethan, she said, do we have to move now that the HOA's gone? I smiled. No, kiddo, this time we stay. She nodded solemnly. Mom would like that. She would, I said, looking up at the tree. She built this swing to last. Turns out, she built us that way too. Marcus walked up the sidewalk, clipboard in hand. He looked healthier now, lighter, like a man who'd finally exhaled after years of holding his breath. City inspectors signed off on the new lights, he said. Proper grounding, full compliance. Guess we're officially safe, I said. He chuckled. You're a hard guy to bet against, Ethan. Wasn't me, I said. It was everyone who decided not to stay quiet. Janet joined us with a box of cookies and a grin. First community event under new leadership. Neighbors' night out. Thought we'd start with something easy. Something honest, I said. That's a good start. The sun dipped lower, gold light filtering through the oaks, leaves. I remembered the first day Linda came after us. Her clipboard, her confidence, her scissors glinting in the sun. For months she'd defined what this neighborhood could be. But in the end, she didn't just lose her power. She lost the illusion that control could ever replace compassion. I sat on the porch steps while the others set up folding tables and lanterns. The smell of barbecue drifted through the air. Kids chased each other across lawns that no one measured or fined anymore. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was fighting something. I felt like I was home. As night fell, neighbors gathered around the oak. Someone played music, soft and nostalgic. Lila climbed onto the swing, laughing as Marcus gave her a gentle push. Her bracelet caught the light, a simple string of colorful beads repaired from what Linda had tried to destroy. I pulled out my phone and recorded a short video for the community page. The screen caught the glow of lanterns, the swing in motion, and the warmth of faces finally free from fear. I looked straight into the camera and said, "When people stand together, even the strongest walls fall. This isn't just about one HOA. It's about every neighborhood that's forgotten who it belongs to." Then, as the music rose behind me, I added, "If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now. Share your story in the comments and let me know where you're watching from." The recording ended with Lila's laughter echoing through the twilight. I watched her, proud, tired, and peaceful. The swing creaked softly, carrying her higher against the deep orange sky, like a heartbeat made of wood and wind. That was my sister's legacy, not the fight, the freedom after it.